Ridiculous.
Yeah, no, sorry. And that's how we do things on this podcast is we're pretty casual, and a lot of times it's the evidence-based triathlete podcast, but really it's two guys talking triathlon. And so yeah, we'll probably talk a little bit more about the New Zealand. So anyways, for everyone jumping in on the call, we've got a special guest, and I'm sorry, Cal, I should have said it. Is it Cal or Callum or?
Cal is probably the easiest because I get so many attempts at pronouncing my name. It's so Cal is fine. If you're just like California, just yeah.
I love it. And you are the CupCake Cartel, and we've ordered your kits through you this year. And I got your logo right here, which I love the logo design. I'm just really thrilled about that. And we've got co-host Ted Gerard. Hey Ted, how's it going?
Good. Yeah. First podcast of the new year. Welcome. Welcome, Cal. Once again, we're excited to talk to you. We were just offline talking a little bit about New Zealand and the 70.3 in New Zealand. And we just found out that Cal is actually from that area or close to that area in Hawke's Bay. And we're just reminiscing about the hot day in Taupo. So that was great.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Go ahead, John.
Yeah. No, we really enjoyed that area and that time zone. But we're back on stateside now. And you're in Australia at this point.
We are we're on the East Coast. If you've heard of a place called Brisbane, we're like an hour and a half north. It's probably, what would I say, like the San Diego equivalent, where it's a bit of a triathlon mecca with the Noosa Triathlon, which is the largest Olympic distance triathlon in the world with about 10,000 plus people. So every November, it's just crazy here. So it's a little bit like, I guess, Boulder, Colorado, or maybe even Tucson, where a lot of triathletes do come here because of the weather. And I guess when there's been good triathletes here in the past, it always attracts more. So we love this part of the world. It's funny. I'm a New Zealander, but living in Australia, the lifestyle is very similar, and it's an easy transition.
No, I love it. So I know we want to get into your pro triathlon career a little bit, but maybe we start by talking about CupCake Cartel, how you started it, where you're at now as a business. Was it something that you actually went down the path of saying, we're going to start this business, or was it a club first and then you transitioned into a business? Maybe give us a little bit of background on the CupCake Cartel.
Yeah, so I guess the most common question we get is why cupcakes? Because I'm a lousy baker and we don't actually have cupcakes here. So we might have a FedEx van turn up to pick up packages and they'll be disappointing because there's no pastries or delicatessen here. So the reason that came about was back in 2014, I was out in Kona in Hawaii. And actually prior to that, let's see. I started obviously pro racing back in 2005, and then as you transition up to long course, I got into long course racing. So most of the long course athletes I knew were based in Boulder, Colorado. So that's where we were based for about 8 years. And I guess since it's a bit of a mecca of triathletes and pro triathletes, we sort of knew everyone. We'd swim with Dave Scott's squad there, the Boulder Masters, Jane Scott, his sister. So we're swimming with, the likes of Marinda Carfrey, Julie Dibbins, Craig Alexander, and just anyone who was everyone at the time, Tim Don. It's like a kid in a candy store being a young New Zealander. Mm-hmm. And obviously coming from like an ITU or WTS background, it felt a lot more liberating being able to race long course because you could sort of pick and choose your races. And New Zealand and Australians, typically, if we took this sort of route, you'd base yourself either in San Diego or Boulder, and you just pick and choose 70.3s around the country. And there was also the Lifetime series at the time. Rev 3 had a series as well, which was successful. And so we'll just target these races. Anyway, it came to a point where obviously you need to try and make money, and it's challenging getting sponsorship. And it's still challenging to this day. And what a friend of mine, her husband, Liz Blatchford's husband, he would come over and take photos and film. And he was a journalist basically and supplied a lot of the media outlets. So we were just talking one day about, hey, we've got all these pros here. You've got Breakfast with Bob. out in Kona, and it's super serious. It's very sort of, you know what you're going to get. It's interesting, but it was very, everyone would put on their sort of media hat, whereas it's like, I know what these guys are like. They're just regular people like you and I, and they have families, and a lot of them have a sense of humor, which I sort of could reason with. And so we got them together. We got one person at a time. We sat them on the couch, and we just had fun, and it was very sarcastic and dry sort of humor. And the name was just, we came up with Cupcakes with Cal, just like breakfast with Bob. And that's sort of where the cupcakes, I guess, empire, if you want to call it, came from. And that was the birth of the sort of cupcakes. But the whole, I guess, the sort of purpose behind going down that route of doing interviews, because I don't have a media background at all. It was more Slow Twitch picked it up, and they started, I mean, every media outlet wants content. So Dan Enfield and Herbert Crabble started sort of hosting these. And what we found is it's a lot easier to leverage that as a pro. You could go out and win a race, but that wouldn't sort of move the needle as much as, you know, you look at the likes of Sam Long and Lionel Sanders these days. They're arguably more valuable than some better performing athletes because they've got this huge community. And if Trek or Specialized or Canyon sees this, they want to make sales, and you've got Sam or Lionel endorsing it, then. So we sort of had that approach as well, where we'd start to build a following and a community, not just out of racing, but sort of having this other sort of, I guess, side hustle. And it started to just sort of gain traction. And that was in 2000.
Oh, I love it. So it started with this idea of doing a podcast and just chatting with people, to rolling into a promotion of gear, or somehow connected with gear, to starting an actual business and manufacturing and selling gear.
Yeah, so the clothing came much further down the line. So we raced right up into 2018. 2018 Kona was my last third and final Kona as a pro, and I started to get to that point, and you probably all have it now, where you're trying to figure out, it's Monday morning, do I get up and go to swim training? You're struggling. Is it from lack of motivation, or are you starting to sort of burn out and sort of looking for something new? So I had that for about 6 months in 2018, and I just won 70.3 Boulder, and then I took 6 weeks off, and I was racing Kona in August, and my coach at the time said, you're probably the unfittest pro right now who's actually racing Kona shortly. But I was just struggling to get out the door and train. So I think we sort of called time on the pro career in 2019, and I think that would have been expedited with COVID coming up as well. But I don't know how, I mean, you guys are probably more familiar with the sort of ambassador teams and programs in the US, where let's see, who have you got? Oh, so Waddy Inc. They had a huge age group team, and that was sort of all based off the apparel. And then you've got Team Zoop, which is enormous. So a lot of these ambassador teams came from products where they're trying to sell either nutrition or apparel, or maybe bikes, for example. And so we're like, yeah, we'll create a team because people wanted a team, but we don't actually have a product because we're not bakers, and we're triathletes, and why do you guys want to join us? So we started to figure out how to offer things, and what we did was we would nominate events like Ironman Boulder or 70.3 Chattanooga, and then we'd pick a couple of races in Australia and a couple of races in New Zealand and a couple of races in Canada. And let's say people like, we need a uniform, so we just used a local supplier, and similar to what you guys have with the Las Vegas Tri Club, and you just start to get hats and socks and all sorts. And then after a couple of years of doing this, we figured, we might as well try and figure it out ourselves, and we did. And so the CupCake Apparel was sort of born in 2020, and even though it wasn't until 2024 that we sort of officially started rolling it out to other teams and individuals, we have been doing it for a little while behind closed doors. But we restricted everything to team members only. And yeah, I guess it's a long-winded way of sort of saying we started with our pro career, and then we created the triathlon club, and then the apparel sort of came third. And but it's a balancing act now because we have 750 people in our triathlon club, and about 70% are US based, which I find still crazy because we haven't been to Boulder since 2019. We're in Kona a couple of times since then, but I think with North Americans that like to be aligned with something and a part of something, a bit like an alumni, where you might root for your college even though you've sort of graduated and left for the next 20 years. And I think people just want to be part of a group in that, and I think we've found success in that.
That's fabulous. And just speaking of being in New Zealand and seeing all the cupcakes, and even painted on or chalked on the ground as you're running, you definitely felt the presence of your team there. Mm-hmm. Did you say there was 60?
Yeah, we had about 65, and then I mean we've had a big stencil made up before, and we'll just get spray chalk and we'll just go around the course. And we'll just, I mean, I always admired Ironman Texas, where there are clubs and you're sort of running through certain areas of the run course, and it was the tri-club area. And for me, even racing as a pro, I really enjoyed just that support. And I love, it's always tough, as you both know, being an individual. It's not really a team sport. The only time you really, you might have swim squad, you might have friends there, and you might have track, or you might get out on Saturday or Sunday morning for a long ride. But I think if you can bring some kind of team environment to it, it will just keep blossoming.
Well, it's definitely culture, right? And I think that you and CupCake have done a nice job of building a culture. And honestly, it's something that we've been trying to do with the Las Vegas Triathlon Club, is actually build culture around the sport. Because I think that for long-term success of triathlon and multi-sport, it has to be a cultural thing. It can't just be a bunch of individuals all over. And yes, there's always going to be the individuals, but I think for long-term success for the sport, I think culture is important.
Yeah. So, I always found as well, training with others, it just made getting out the door so much easier. Even if you had a different bike session, let's meet at 7:00 tomorrow morning. We'll start together, and then once we've done 30 miles, and you go and do your intervals, and I'll do my hill reps, or I'll meet you, at the cafe at the end.
Yeah. And honestly, that is hard to build in an individual sport. And, you've got, well, like you said, everyone's got different plans. Everyone's got maybe ego associated with it. And one of the things I'll give you a comment or compliment on with your group is you get the feeling when you look at your website and you talk to people in CupCake, that it's not always about the ego and winning, and it's more about the culture, and it's more about health and wellness and just being part of something that's positive. And I think that that's a really good thing. And some of these other clubs that are out there are more focused on just like the result and winning, or purely selling product. And I don't feel like your group is like that. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, so to join our team, we created an application that really hopefully appealed to people who had a sense of humor. And we sort of made it quite clear from the get-go that results were not important. It was important for sure, so we still attracted some top age groupers. But the bread and butter of triathlon is your mum and dad, middle-aged people who are probably balancing a job, like working 40 hours a week, 38 hours a week, and they're trying to squeeze in a wind training session before work or a swim after work. And for sure, there's other people there's smaller performance teams, but we just found the bread and butter is just regular people trying to have a healthy lifestyle. Mm-hmm. And occasionally there's a few people that sort of make that transition to where they can somehow get a hall pass from their partner to train 20 hours a week and become a good age grouper.
So I'm curious, I've read a little bit about your application process, and some of the things that you look for is definitely what you're just describing here. It's not just a race resume, but it's more about who the person is. So I'm curious, how many applicants do you get, and what percentage of people do you take?
So I was kind of blown away because I'm not sure if you remember Peter Hurley, who just from American Bicycle Group in Chattanooga. So a lot of my personal sponsored rolled over into our team as well. So we talked to Peter, and we went and stayed with him in Lorraine down in Chattanooga, Tennessee there. And this was our sort of final year of racing. And he said, "Oh, you could probably build a team here." And I said, "Oh, not really sure about that. I would have no idea where to start." And I said, "Oh yeah, maybe we could do that. We'll just have about 40 people." And I think the first year we might have had about 300 applicants. Because a lot of my brand was just having fun and being humorous, and I'd probably get cancelled these days for it. But we were really strict at the start. We're like, we just want people who have maybe replied with some funny answers. So I remember reading through the applications. Our team, our first year was 165 people, and I just wanted people they didn't take themselves too seriously, and we just made the questions just fun. Yeah. Kept it simple.
I love it. I think that speaks to Ted's point that culture is important, because I think a lot of triathletes are looking for that culture, and they don't necessarily want to have just another race performance type of club. So having some enjoyment is just important.
Yeah, I think if you're enjoying it too, there will be longevity in the sport, and it's stressful financially and time wise as well. If you've got kids, it's challenging, or if you've got a stressful job, you might have projects due or upper management riding you where you might be flying interstate all the time and struggling to get to, you might have to be going to a Lifetime Fitness and running on the treadmill or the stationary bike. And at some point that might be difficult to keep that up. Whereas I think if you're enjoying it, I just found the people I trained with as well in Boulder were mostly Aussies and Kiwis. We definitely had a bunch of local athletes, but half the time we were out doing a 5-hour ride in the Rockies there, we were just laughing, and we'd get our training done and we'd have fun, and we could still win races and podium, but we're just trying to enjoy it,
I think you're hitting the nail on the head. For most of us, that's what we're doing, right? Like, there's, think about it. Like, I was just talking to somebody yesterday about 70.3 worlds, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, the person that won my age group beat me by an hour." Like, yeah, because they're 25 hours a week and they're kind of almost pro level, and you're enjoying triathlon. You are training 15 hours a week, and you're having a good time, and you got a partner that you train with at this time and another partner that you train with this time. You swim with this group, and you're having a great time with it. And there, like you said, triathlon can be very inclusive when you look at it that way. And it doesn't have to be just like hitting every number all the time and just ultra focused on that. Because I don't think that's very healthy for the average age grouper. And definitely not healthy, maybe not healthy physically, but also not healthy mentally.
I wanted to transition into age group racing, but then I looked at what the benchmark was, and I could see some guys were starting to go like 840 and 830, and I was like, okay, it's actually not too far off pro racing at the time. But these are all guys that are training 20 to 25 hours, which is what we were doing. And I was like, well, might as well just keep racing pro, because I guess they might just be a poor swimmer that wouldn't make the group. But they're sort of in no man's land. They'd win their age group all the time, but they couldn't, there is a big gap to get across to pro racing. But yeah, I don't know. I would love to come back to age group racing at some point. But as you both know, like even in your 40s and your 50s, some of the guys are really fast and girls.
Yeah. Well, even at 70.3 worlds, I mean, looking at, the age groups like the 45 to 49, 50 to 55, they're low fours, if not threes. And that's really fast for someone in their 50s, Yeah. Like that's legitimate fast. And then you start Googling these people and like, oh, they were an Olympic medalist in rowing, and they were an Olympic medalist in this, or they were a world champion in like maybe a different sport even. Or they were an elite swimmer or something. Like they almost all are coming from this very elite background, and often former pros at different sports. And
Yeah.
it's really, to me, it's awesome. I think that's a great part of our sport is we can toe the line with these people. It's the same race course, same day. I mean, to me, that's awesome. Like I love that stuff. But that's that's my own thoughts and feelings on it.
Yeah. I mean, I think like if you've had kids in your early 20s and you're an empty nester and you've got time and you're looking to fill the void and you don't want to buy the Harley Davidson or the Roadster and triathlon is your sort of escape, then I think go for it. And if you've got a wife or a husband that can tolerate it and it means you're happy and healthy, then it's great. I know some people out here who are top age groupers where they'll do a year of training full time and then they'll do a year of sort of maintenance where give back to the family a little bit. So I guess every situation is different.
Oh, John and I are running up to the situation where we're running into a lot of people that are retired.
Mm.
We both still work full time, and you see these people that are retired, and some of these people like late 50s, 60s, they're putting in almost 30 hours a week.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, wow, like I'm not at that point where I'm retired yet, but that's what like, it's kind of funny how the age group, when you get, when you start to move up, that you see this transition of the retired people, and man, they can make some pretty big gains when you don't have you're not working for the corporation anymore.
Yeah. I think, good for them. I guess if they want to, everyone, each to their own, I guess. I mean,
I love it.
Yeah.
Well,
it's
something we promote in the club is triathlon needs to add value to your life and others around you as well, because it's so easy in triathlon, and there's plenty of stories of where we get a little self-absorbed and we miss out on some of the fun. In fact, I talked with a pro recently, a retired pro going to New Zealand, and he told me that he really missed out on enjoying going to New Zealand when he went as a pro. And, both Ted and I we went mostly with the purpose of enjoying New Zealand and then doing a race. But I'm curious, how long did you spend in the age group ranks before you turned pro?
So before I went to college or university, as we call it in New Zealand, I raced age group racing in New Zealand. So I'd go to the age group national champs, but I wouldn't sort of finish anywhere. And even go into just national competitions, the big city slickers always seem to be a lot faster, or, at different times people reach puberty quicker and they might just be able to just swim so much better or run faster. So I went to university and did nothing, just surfed and did no sport, because I just found it too hard to live in a dormitory or live on campus and try and train as well when everyone is having fun. And I just found that difficult because it's like I was, 18, 19, 20, 21, trying to figure it out. And I think, so I didn't really have that sort of, that nice story of a transition. I finished university and I decided, hey, I'm going to move to Australia. I moved to Australia by myself when I was 20, 21 and joined a squad. And that would be my advice to any juniors that want to get good, is to find where the good squads are and go and train with them, because I feel like it's a really quick way to you figure out the difference or the delta between you and where you need to be to make the swim group and in the bike group, and then what pace you need to run off the bike. And so it took me a year and a half to go from sort of a pretty average age grouper to I qualified for the world champs under 23 in Switzerland, and it was all brand new to me. I could run a 31-minute 10K off, like just from training 7 days a week with a squad in Australia. And I don't know if you remember Big Matty Reid and Shane Reid, and there was a bunch of those guys that used to train in Australia under a coach. And so I came to their squad. They had all left by that time, but let me see. There's a bunch of squads in the US as well, where if you want to just speed up your trajectory as like a junior, we didn't have the college system like you guys have. I know it's definitely in the females. I think there's a lot more triathlon sort of pathways, but just being around people day in, day out. If you've got a colleague in your squad who's doing well at states or national level, I think it's really important to I just always used to look at them and be like, what do I need to do to get to that level? And yeah, you just all of a sudden riding it like, 40 kilometers an hour or 26 miles per hour is not hard, because until you're surrounding these people and you see, hey, one day these guys, they're sick or they're injured or they're just a regular person. They're not this unattainable. So take Lionel Sanders, you look at him and he's just like a beast. But if you went and spent a month with him or 2 months or 3 months, you start to realize he's a normal person. And you'd see days where his ebbs and flows of he has a good day and a bad day. No different to age group racing. It's just you figure out how to hurt yourself, and you start taking things more seriously, like nutrition, and you sleep and you stretch a bit more, and you just surround yourself with these people. A bit like at work, if you're in an office environment and everyone's positive versus if everyone's sort of a bit pessimistic, then it'll bring you down. But it's like a tide that lifts all the boats together, where if you can get with a squad, and that, I feel like that's the quickest way to figure it out.
Love it.
Yeah. So I actually had a US coach for quite a while. He was an Olympic marathoner, Peter Fitzinger. So he raced LA Olympics and then Seoul Olympics. He was from upstate New York. So he moved to New Zealand after his running career, and he headed up the sort of, what would you call it? Like the high performance sport aspect in New Zealand. But yeah, he was like a 209 marathoner and raced 2 Olympics, and he was racing like Alberto Salazar sort of era. But yeah, just really, I was quite blessed to have a few good people out of that in our corner as well.
Awesome. So I know we're going to get a little long here. I want to ask you a little bit about the apparel, the CupCake apparel. So right now we're kind of at this place in triathlon, especially higher end triathlon, where apparel, we're noticing that apparel really makes a difference, right? Like fast suits versus not fast suits. There's some numbers out there, 12 watts, 10 watts, 8 watts. Do you guys have you done any of the aero testing and that kind of stuff? And if so, could you talk a little bit about that and potentially your suits?
Yes. So we've been in the velodrome in Brisbane here, which I found an intimidating place, because I don't know if you've ever been to velodrome,
yes.
With just how steep the banks are. Like, it's crazy, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we took let me see, I'm trying to get my mirrors right. There's a whole rack of suits there. We made variations of different fabrics and different lengths. We took, we removed pockets, we removed collars, we added ice pockets. We just played around with all sorts of different fabrics, because we thought, to be taken seriously as an apparel brand, we needed to venture down to that now. And I think as well, with the rise in athletes on YouTube who are documenting going to the wind tunnel or the velodrome or outside testing, we just needed to be amongst that space. Plus, both Elise and I were pros, and we'd spent so long sort of being immersed in the age group ranks and starting to feel like, the first thing we noticed when we reached out to clubs or individuals is they want to know how fast your suit is. And we're like, okay, so we needed to test. So we, let me see, I think November last year, we went to the velodrome and tested a bunch of suits. We found our fastest suit. At the same time, we tested against a few competitors. And this is a bit of a gray area, because we found if you Google the CDA or information sort of pertaining to data, it's really hard to find anything. So, like Trek might bring out a new bike, but very seldom would they say this is where it stacks up versus the S-Works or the Dogma or something like that. So the guy that tested that ran the protocol, he said, just be very careful about making statements, because it can backfire on you as well. So we sort of had to be quite careful. So we know in-house how ours stacks up against some of the big names. And it was really interesting, but it was also liberating as well, because you can sort of feel like an outsider until you've actually put your foot into that sort of velodrome and seeing, hey, this is where we're at. And we tested faster than 2 of our big competitors, which I was really, really stoked about. And we're actually going down the path now of, let me see, I've got a whole drawer here of aero socks and that's our next sort of sort of venture into that as well. So actually, this is the suit that sort of was the champion out of those the testing. So it's called the Nexus Pro, and it's got basically, this is one of our first ones off the production line for a client in Australia here. So it's something that we're going to continue to keep going and refining and just testing against other brands and seeing how we stack up. And it's exciting.
Awesome. Well, that's exciting. It is exciting and neat to see the development of kits, from the day you were racing. When was your first race? You said 2000.
Oh, so I remember I raced 70.3 Boise in a two-piece Kiwami suit.
Yeah.
And
it's changed a bit. Back in my day, we were, the whole Speedo type of thing. But I've got one more question for you. What's the story behind the water bottles behind you?
Oh, I got bored yesterday and just started putting them around the windows. So all those boxes there are filled with water bottles. So we have an office upstairs here and a sort of retail store down below. And I just thought, it'd be cool just to put them around the room. So we've got them right around, and there's no real glamorous story to it. I just just wanted to put them on display.
Very powerful. Love it.
I need to get on your level as well as Ted, where I've got all my medals at home and trophies at home, but I find how have you done your medals there, Ted?
So it's actually it's wooden racks. They're going across, and then there's nails in the racks, and there's multiple levels of them.
Yeah.
So it actually wasn't that big of a lift, to be honest with you. But to get the levels in. Actually, I need another level. It's funny. I've been racing now for about 15 years, and man, it's amazing what you collect along the way. But I personally like having the medals because I go and look at them sometimes, and it helps kind of jog my memory of a race.
Yeah.
And to me, that's I don't know. I race for the memories, and so that's always a nice little keepsake. It's kind of funny. My friend and I, we have this kind of saying that we won't do a race unless there's a medal.
Yeah, and I tell you what, I'll say, who was it? I think it was Ashcroft Medals or someone like that does them in the US, or was doing them for the Ironman brand at the time when I was racing, and they started becoming these nice big medals. I did the 70.3 World Champs twice in Vegas, and it's just this awesome big medal. I don't know if you guys have it, but it sort of has the checkers and the dice and that.
But it's a good memory, right? It's to me, I think that's super cool. And the fact that I have them here, it's funny because I actually had them here before even Zoom was a thing and COVID was a thing. It was just basically where they were in my house. And I'm like, well, I need to set my computer up for all these online meetings and stuff. So it ended up being the background. So it ended up being a pretty good thing.
I think as well as you look back on those past races, you become proud of it too. You might be disappointed at the time because you're trying to qualify for something. And now I feel immensely proud of, you're like, oh, I got this mug from here or this little trophy here. And even the medals, we have a 5-year-old son now, and he just likes looking. If you do Ironman cans in Australia, it's one that has a turtle in it that flicks around, or New Zealand has pretty nice medals as well. And I think you can look back on it now and it brings back good memories.
Yeah, I agree. So once again, I know we're getting a little bit long. I want to let you know that I did try on the suit a couple of weeks ago. I'm excited. I'm excited by the design we've come up with. I'm excited to know that it's a fast suit. I bought it not knowing that Yale had done a bunch of aero testing on it. So I'm planning on going really fast this year, just in your suit.
Awesome. Do you have any goals? Any qualifying races?
I'd like to qualify for Spain. So I think both John and I are going to be racing in St. George. This is the last year of St. George. You probably are aware of that. And it's really quite sad for us because that's our closest 70.3 race to Vegas. So I think we're both gunning for a shot to Spain at St. George. Yeah.
Well, I've got a question for you guys both, which is probably the hottest topic in triathlon Ironman distance racing is, what's your take on how Ironman should handle the Kona sort of knee split dilemma?
Okay. I'll go first. Personally, I think that they should be moving the World Championship around. The 70.3 Worlds has been, for me, I've done 8 of them, has been the kind of the experience of my lifetime. Like, I've gone to all these places, like, I know it's close to where you are. I went to Mooloolaba in 2016, and I would never go to Mooloolaba. I'd been to Australia, but I wouldn't go there, right? And then I went up to Noosa. I probably would have never went there. And just going to Taupo, and John and I, we both went to Austria, and all of these places I wouldn't go. Where, like, for example, Kona, every year the same thing, and many people I know that have been to multiple Konas are like, yeah, it's cool, but it's the same thing every year. I think that for the long term, like, and I'm talking long term culture, I think moving it around would be spectacular. That's my take. I've never raced in Kona, but that I'd be more excited to go travel the world. But that's my take.
What about you, John? If you're the CEO of Ironman, what would you do?
So, I mean, I started racing back in '85, and so I was racing back in the heyday of Kona and Iron War and all that. I qualified for Kona. I raced Kona. It was a special race because running down Ali'i Drive, you're just like, this is where all the stories were. Julie Moss, Iron War, whatever it is, and there's so much lore that's built around Kona. It was really neat to be able to do that event. But when they started moving alternating going to Nice, I'm like, I want to go to Nice. I want to qualify and go to Nice. I would love to do that. And so I'm like that as well, is that I would enjoy the opportunity to race somewhere else. Kona is a special place. It's nice to have done that, and I enjoyed that. But I wouldn't want to go every year, and I would very much be open to racing in some other places, especially Nice. I mean, I did 70.3 World Championship in Nice, and that was just fantastic. I'd love to go back.
Yeah, I think it gives people an opportunity as well to do well who maybe don't race well on the heat, or if they can climb a hill, they might be they might be 120 pounds and be able to climb, whereas they can't push it against Europeans on the Queen K. So it's a dilemma, but it'll be interesting to see how they handle it.
Yeah, it's the hot topic, and I do also know you talked about the World Championship here in Henderson, Las Vegas, and there's a period of time that there is fatigue from the city in terms of running an event, getting volunteers, the load of people that come in, racers and support crew, and even the training beforehand as well. And so there are cities that do get fatigue, and I know Kona's a small area, and so I certainly understand that aspect of it as well.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Well, and that's what we were hearing about St. George. That's part of it. It's city fatigue, and they had 3 World Championships in 18 months.
Yeah.
Right, that they hosted there, and it was spectacular. John and I were at all of them. But it's the fatigue of the city, and I think as good stewards of triathlon, I think that's the other thing we need to think about, is not to wear out our welcome in places and create negativity. And if that's what Kona is now, and I don't know, that's what I hear, then maybe it is in the best interest of the sport even to maybe even rotate through, right? Like maybe every 5th year it's a Kona year or something. But yeah, I don't know. But once again, these are just opinions of a couple guys that like triathlon. And
how did you find the long haul flight out to a race like Mooloolaba or Taupo? Did you find it a barrier?
I found more of it to Mooloolaba than I did to Taupo. And I think when we flew to Mooloolaba, we also, for us, I think it was 3 flights, because I had to fly to LA, then LA to Sydney to Brisbane, I think is what we did. That was a long day. When Auckland, I drove to LA and flew direct.
Yeah.
And then only a 3-hour time difference for us was amazing. Like, yeah. I felt like it took me less than a day to be fine. And going to Australia, I think it took me 3 or 4 days.
Yeah.
But I will also tell you, for us on the West Coast, it's easier to go to New Zealand than it is to go to Europe.
Yeah.
And I know, and I never would have thought to say that, because it seems to us so far, but
yeah,
the actual travel time is maybe even less.
Yeah,
because a little town like Taupo, having Ironman New Zealand for so many years, and they're used to having events as well because it's sort of the crux of tourism there. And so they have a round the lake cycle challenge of 100 miles, which is hugely popular. And then the Ironman's been there forever. So the town actually embraces it somewhat. Whereas we were last out in Kona in 2022, and it was probably the first time we've had probably some abuse said to us from locals where they're like, you're sort of not welcome here. And I'm like, heck, I'm just here supporting. Like the Airbnb that I'm paying $500 a night for is pretty happy about it. And but I think if you don't see that money trickling down into your wages, then maybe you don't understand it so much. But if you're a local restaurant owner, or you know, that helps a lot. So it's a hard one.
It's a big economic impact on a city, but like you said, it doesn't always impact everybody. But there is, it's a balance of trying to find the right size city to handle the load of people, but also a city that's not too big because the cost of the race goes up when you used to have to start doing permitting and more personnel, paid personnel. So it's really it's tough to find the right location.
I couldn't imagine. I was talking to a former event owner, Barry Siff, who used to run like the Boulder Peak and a bunch of the races in Colorado there, and just the amount of money it costs to shut down roads or have a police officer at an intersection, and it'd be out of control. And I guess a lot of the people who speculate on all these topics maybe don't take into consideration just. We did Rev 3 South Carolina one year, and there was like one county that didn't want it to come through there. And there's a local farmer who was throwing tacks on the road, and it was hard to navigate.
It's tough. It's not easy, but we love the sport and we love traveling. Both Ted and I have raced around the world and have enjoyed just about every travel race that we've done. It's a neat opportunity to say, I'm going to go here because I'm going to go do a race, but really it's an exploration of a new area.
Well, like Ted said, there's, if he didn't come to Australia, he probably would never come to Noosa. And I did races in Turkey and Copenhagen. And I remember catching a bus in the middle of the night to a race in Turkey, and the bus driver was chain smoking. And I'm like, I'll just never have gone, even like Boise in Idaho or Coeur d'Alene. Now I can tick it off and say I went there. I might have only spent 5 days there, and most of it's just around the race. But it's actually, and this is why I enjoy still being a part of the sport, is you can go to an event and probably enjoy it more when you're not racing and take in everything a little bit.
No, I think that it's, once again, we're talking about culture, and even seeing other people's culture is part of your culture, because it changes who you are as a person as well. And the places that you just mentioned, I mean, they're kind of local to us, but to somebody from the Southern Hemisphere, nobody, I'm sure, not outside of triathlon, knows what Coeur d'Alene is in Australia, right? Like this little town in northern Idaho, but like it, and you've seen it, and it's one of the most beautiful places in the world, and that develops you.
It's cool because it does bring you to these different events. I remember doing Syracuse 70.3, flying into New York and driving up, and the whole thing becomes an adventure. You might fly into Auckland in New Zealand, and then you're driving on the wrong side of the road on these narrow roads between mountains, and it's an adventure and it's a challenge. And as you both know, like just arriving to the start line with your bike in one piece after you unpack it, and overcoming the different culture or the currencies, or having your phone on roaming and put you in uncomfortable situations. But a lot of the time you might lean on a colleague you're traveling with or a friend who you train with, and hey, if someone got a spare tubular, or hey, I need this Garmin tool, or you figure it out.
Oh, I love it. Well, you've been very generous with your time. Thank you.
Yeah, it's been great talking to you both, and I'm always open to chatting. I'm an open book, and like we have hopefully a great culture within our team, and well, we hope to see your club grow as well. And it's great to be a little bit a part of it with their clothing.
We're excited to get it, and John and I will both be showing it off on the podcast. We'll be wearing our nice polos very soon. So
love the logo,
brilliant, awesome. It looks great.
Thanks again, and I hope you have a great day and continued success with your club and with the business. And once again, we're actually excited to be part of it as well.
Yeah, for sure. So hopefully we cross paths soon. Like we'll be out in Kona this year. It's been a couple of years since we've been out there, and it's always great to check in with everyone. So if we do cross paths, then we'd love to catch up.
Awesome.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks so much.